Self-harming behaviors through polyvagal lens. How then shall we see them? So, thanks for tuning in. Just a reminder, the content on this channel, as in this video, as all my videos, is for educational purposes only. Do not think of this information as constituting a doctor-patient relationship or something along those lines. The best way to utilize the content on this channel is to use it as fodder for thought, to bring it up to your own primary care or practitioner in terms of a springboard to have dialogue. Thanks for tuning in. So, self-harming behaviors. They're often, in my experience, misunderstood. Somewhere along the line, they got associated with borderline personality disorder, and of course the patriarchal lens of mental health views self-harming behaviors as attention-seeking behavior. I'm sure there's some small percentage of the time where that's the case, but in my experience, in my practice, with the swath of people that I have spoken of this with, that is not the case at all. If in fact it's often something that would be the opposite of that almost. So through the polyvagal lens, let's look. First of all, if you're working with complex trauma as a practitioner, you will know this to be the case. Someone with complex trauma gets stuck chronically, like a pinball in a pinball machine, pinging around, typically hanging out a lot in fight or flight. There's lots of anxiety. There's this amped up, hyper-vigilant kind of state that someone is in. After a while, the exhaustion of that state wears out the person emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually. Like on every level, somebody gets exhausted. Then they drop into freeze. Polyvagal theory does have a picture of this, right? Freeze is the state right before death, when the gazelle is caught in the mouth of the tiger on the African savannah, and everything kind of moves in the opposing direction of fight or flight. So you have lethargy, you have a lack of energy, you have a shutdown, dissociated kind of space that the person experiences, and indifference, a lack of feeling. All of that designed so that if the tiger tears the gazelle limb from limb, it is a little less painful. So there's a painlessness to this space. However, if you are a survivor of a lot of trauma and you're in complex trauma and then you drop into freeze, there's an absence of feeling and an indifference, of a frozen kind of space that someone's in. And that's the context where I see self-harming behaviors coming in. That's where a person might engage in cutting. They might engage in harming themselves. And it's not necessarily because they want attention or this attention-seeking behavior. Most of the time, it's this maladaptive pattern of trying to shift out of freeze and back towards healing. They're going, okay, I'm in freeze. I'm not feeling anything. It seems like, through that lens, that feeling pain might be better than feeling nothing. And so that's where you see things like cutting. And so when we go to help someone in this kind of space as practitioners, we have to think in terms of, this is a coping mechanism. We need to replace this kind of coping mechanism with less maladapted coping mechanisms, with more positive ways of learning to shift out of freeze. Also reminding the person that when you shift out of freeze, you're going to, by default, go back into an autonomic fight or flight kind of space before you enter into a peaceful rest and digest and social engagement space. So that, because of the hierarchical nature of the system, we have to realize that that's going to happen. Secondly, we have to look at this through this lens of this is a call to action. This is someone who, on some level, recognizes that feeling is integral to healing. And so, in some kind of maladaptive way, there's an understanding, I'll put that in quotes, like I said, might be unconscious, of the need for emotional literacy, the need to feel. Like, feeling is important to that. And so recognizing that piece, and also this picture of, again, I've said this a million times. Okay, not a million, guys. But I've said this quite a few times, that your symptoms are a picture of how to heal. Your symptoms and what's happening in your body, in your mind, in your emotional space is all trying to move towards healing most of the time. 9 times out of 10. And rather than look at this as, oh my gosh, this person is now cutting, if we look at, how is this the solution? How is this helping? How is this part of the healing trajectory? We get a lot more mileage. This is how we arrive at a space where we go, okay, looks like this is helping shift somebody out of freeze from a polyvagal lens perspective. So, wow, okay, so we got to think in terms of how to shift somebody out of freeze, chronic freeze, into fight or flight and back up to parasympathetic, to the rest and digest and social engagement space. Again, I'm not advocating for cutting. I'm not advocating for these maladaptive behaviors. I'm making an observation that there's a context and there's a usefulness in the space when someone is in freeze, and a reason as to why this might make a whole lot of sense, as to why it's happening. And as practitioners, if we can get our heads around that, I think we can be a lot more useful in helping somebody work with this and work through this. That is all. Thanks for tuning in. As always, give me a thumbs up if this is useful. Audio.